Hey, this is Mike from the Run Testers, and in this video we're going to be talking about how the Brooks Ghost 16 compares to the Brooks Glycerin 21. Two of Brooks's cushion shoes that do now share the same cushioning technology, but does that equal a similar running experience? Well, that's what we're going to get into here in this video. Myself, Nick and Kieran have all put some running time in both of these shoes, and we're going to tell you whether you should be going for the Brooks Ghost 16 or you should be going for the Brooks Glycerin 21. So here's the key differences you need to know about the Brooks Ghost 16 and the Glycerin 21. First, let's start with price, and the Glycerin 21 is the more expensive of the two Brooks shoes. In terms of fit, you've got more options for the Ghost 16 compared to the Glycerin 21, which comes in just medium and wide fit options. Weight-wise, the Ghost 16 is the noticeably lighter of the two shoes in a UK men's size 8, and there's a difference in the drops, with the Glycerin having the edge in the stack heights at both the heel and forefoot. It's knit versus mesh in the upper departments, though they now match in terms of cushioning technologies, with both using Brooks's nitrogen-injected DNA Loft V3 foam. They're matched at the outsole too, with both using Brooks's new Rotac outsole that uses rubber and silica to provide that grip and a level of durability that should ensure they can handle plenty of running time.
Comes to the fit of the two shoes. I've got the same size in both. I've got a UK 9, which is a US 10. That is my normal running shoe size for Brooks and other brands, and they both fit really well. I've got the right amount of length in the front of the shoe, nice comfortable hold around the midfoot. Do have some problems with the heels of the shoes, in particular the Ghost 16. It is such a structured and firm heel counter, so much padding there that it did irritate my Achilles a fair bit on the run. Now, the Glycerin also has quite a lot going on at the back there. It's also a very structured heel counter, but during the run test of this shoe, I didn't really have those problems, and it might just have been at the moment I'm going through a flare-up and the Brooks aggravated it, and at the time of the Glycerin I didn't have that problem. But yeah, I think with both of them I'd be a bit wary of the amount of structure you have at the back, but with the Glycerin it didn't seem to really affect me. It does feel slightly different, does look a little bit different to the one on the Ghost, so maybe the Glycerin's okay and the Ghost isn't, but that was the big problem with the fit for me with the Ghost. It just started to aggravate my Achilles if I used it too much, just because it is so firm at the back there.
So in terms of fit, I've had both of these shoes in a UK size 8. That's my typical running shoe size. I've also had them in the kind of medium width fit options that you get on both of these shoes. Now obviously there's more width fit options on the Ghost compared to the Glycerin 21, so that's something to keep in mind if you want something a little bit more accommodating. Now in terms of what I've seen in these two shoes, I would say that going true to size has generally been okay for me. I would say with the Glycerin 21, it is naturally the more accommodating of the two shoes, particularly when you look at what you're getting in the midfoot and also what you're getting up in the toes, where I think with the Brooks Ghost 16, I think it's been a little bit on the narrow and short side for me in the toe box. Now, it has been an issue for me in my runs, but I have noticed compared to the Glycerin 21, well, I think the Glycerin is a little bit more roomy in general. And I think for shoes that you're maybe going to run a little bit longer in, I think the Glycerin 21 is going to be more of a true to size shoe, where the Ghost 16, maybe there might be an argument to look at maybe playing around half size based on my testing. Elsewhere, it's very similar in terms of what you're getting on the shoe, similar lacing, similar leather padding on the tongue as well too, all built for comfort and kind of that snug feeling in terms of those uppers and that fit. Plenty of padding in the heel collars as well, slightly different formations of those heel collars. Now I know that the guys have had some issues in terms of rubbing the Achilles. I haven't had any problems on the Ghost 16 with that. Similar story with the Glycerin 20 as well too. So yeah, I think the main things for me in terms of taking away what I've experienced on the fit is that I think the Glycerin 21 is naturally the more roomy, more kind of accommodating shoe, even that kind of medium kind of size fit for me, whereas I think with the Ghost 16, it's a little bit on the more narrow side, still pretty accommodating, but I found particularly in the toes, it maybe comes up a little bit short for me in my usual size.
So when it comes to fit, I ran in a UK 8.5 in both the Ghost 16 and the Glycerin 21. Overall, I would say that the Ghost 16 has a little bit more room across the top of the toe box. It feels a little bit more flexible up front. It's a bit more roomy overall, but in this you've got a good thumbs width here. There's loads of wiggle room from these nice flexy uppers. Going back into the midfoot, loads of sort of flex here around the toe knuckles. There's no pinching and no discomfort. I get good lockdown from the laces. The padded tongues are nice and comfortable and plush. Heel collars again, you know, medium to sort of well padded. All good for heel hold. The only problem I have is this heel counter is very, very stiff here. It rises quite high and there's a big kind of roll top of padding and that has been putting a bit of pressure on my Achilles. If you suffer from that, that might be an issue here. But overall, I'd recommend going true to size in those. When you get into the Glycerin 21, it's a similar story really. There's loads of room at the end, good thumbs width, lots of room across the top, loads of wiggle room with these nice flexible uppers. Same across the kind of toe knuckles area, good lockdown in the laces. Similar big padded tongues as well, so you're getting plushness here as well, which is very similar. Heel collars almost the same. The one thing I would say, there's not quite, it's still a stiff heel counter, but I don't think it rolls over quite as high as on the Ghost 16, so I'm getting less of that kind of Achilles problem. And for that reason, I think I prefer the fit of the Glycerin 21 overall, but I would recommend going true to size in both of these shoes.
I've done a lot of miles in both of these shoes, and I've really enjoyed running in both of them. I have to say, I really like this DNA Loft V3 foam. I find it's a foam that's just very much to my taste. I'm not going to claim it's like the best foam on the market or the most amazing feeling underfoot. It's not super squishy or bouncy or anything like that, but it's just a foam very much to my taste. It's really balanced very well, so it is comfortable, but it's also got enough firmness and resilience there to give you a nice, stable and kind of responsive base to push against if you want to do longer runs, faster runs, where I prefer something a little bit firmer like this than just an all-out squishy shoe like something like the New Balance 1080 V13. I find that a little bit mushy if I'm going to try and do longer runs after a while. It just feels a bit too soft underfoot. Get the extra kind of bounce back from both of these shoes because they've got the same foam now. Now, in the past, the Glycerin I think was clearly a better shoe because the Ghost had the DNA Loft V2 foam, which I didn't think was particularly good. It was quite a dead feeling foam to me. But they've now both got the same foam. You've got small differences in the drop, small differences in the stack out. They actually do come across on the run more than I probably expected when I started testing the Ghost and then brought the Glycerin back out again to try them, and I did a run with both shoes at the same time. They are very similar, feeling overfoot, but you can feel the kind of slightly smoother, softer ride of the Glycerin, I'd say. Like, you've got that slightly lower drop. Brooks is a very high drop shoe, so it does give you a little bit of a slappy feeling at times as you rock through onto your forefoot. If you're a heel striker like myself, you still get that a bit with the Glycerin. It's not like it's a low drop shoe, but it does have a slightly smoother feel, and the extra cushioning does come into play, and it doesn't come at the cost of a huge amount of extra weight, I'd say. So you end up with just a slightly nicer feeling ride all round. A lot of the other elements on the shoes are very similar, including the fit at the back. But again, I think I slightly prefer that on the Glycerin. So you have almost got a classic brand cushion shoe lineup. You've got the slightly more expensive shoe that feels slightly better on the run. And they are very close all round though. There's a lot of overlap here, certainly more than there was before. Got a slightly lighter feeling with the Ghost, which maybe gives it that little bit of extra versatility. But I've done kind of easy to steady runs in both shoes, moving at a decent pace by the end of them. And they feel similarly good. They feel similarly great for long runs. I really like long runs in the shoe, aside from the fit at the heel in the Ghost. They're really comfortable throughout, and like I say, they still feel nice and consistent and balanced at the end of those long runs, so you can keep ticking over. It's not like the shoe hardens up or gets mushy at all at the end. It just feels exactly the same at the start of a run as it did at the end, and I really like that feeling for long runs. So I have found them very similarly enjoyable on the run. I don't think the slight differences in feel I noticed on the Glycerin amounted to a huge amount. If I'd never tested both shoes at the same time, it's not really something I think that would come across as clearly, but it is a little bit softer and a little bit smoother, and it does kind of earn its status as the premium cushion shoe in the Brooks lineup compared to the Ghost, which is that little bit cheaper.
So when it comes to the run test, I've done about 25 miles, maybe more in the Glycerin 21, around the same amount in the Ghost 16. I've used them for the same thing, nice, slow, easy runs, recovery stuff, as well as some mixed pace and some up-tempo bits and pieces, mostly on road, a little bit of river piles thrown in as well, the usual drill for our testing here. I've also just done a side-by-side mile with one shoe on each foot 2 days after running the Comrades Marathon, so that was really interesting. Thing is here, I think the most interesting point is actually having done that mile, I almost forgot that I was running them. I ended up doing two actually, and I forgot that I was running in different shoes. So I think what you're getting here, the ride, it's not an awful lot to distinguish between these two shoes, which makes it really interesting because obviously the Glycerin 21 is going to come in at a higher price point, and the question for me is, can you get away with going in a Ghost 16? Now I'd say they feel very similar on the foot. The fit is similar. There's not a huge amount to choose between the way they hold and the overall roominess of the toe box. The fact is you've got a similar stack of that DNA Loft V3 means that the ride is actually very, very similar as well. Now I actually like running in both of these shoes. I think they're really nicely balanced. There's good cushioning without it being over soft or over cushioned. I think the weight on the foot feels quite nice. These are easy shoes to run in, to clip along. They have got a bit of energy. There's, they're not the most energetic daily trainers you're going to find, but if you want to take them up a gear, you do get a bit back from that DNA Loft V3, enough to sort of punch up, I would say, not to my sort of fastest paces, but if I'm sort of pushing my sort of easy to middling paces, these guys do a great job. It's certainly made the Ghost a bit more of a lively shoe, and it's brought it much closer to the Glycerin 21. It'll be interesting to see how Brooks maybe kick this 21 on next, having made the ride very similar here. Now, I mentioned it in the fit. I think one of the differences that I notice, I think if you can see, actually they've got quite similar heel collars here, but this one is a bit narrower, and I think it curves in a little bit more at the top. And that has been putting a little bit of pressure on my Achilles. So one distinction that I would make between these two shoes is definitely on the way that they fit and feel. If you have any trouble with heel counter slightly aggravating the bottom of your Achilles, the Ghost might not be for you. I think the Glycerin works slightly better. But overall, I found it very hard to distinguish between these two shoes on that side-by-side mile. Like I said, I forgot that I was wearing different shoes. I was kind of happy on very tired legs to be running along in them, which sort of speaks volumes really for how comparative these are. And for use cases, I think in terms of what I would use these for, I think they're really good for easy clip along miles. You can punch it up a little bit more. I think they're just a happy, easy, well-balanced, well-cushioned, stable, nice landing platform. They've got all of those things that you want for in an easy kind of cruising daily trainer. And yeah, I do really like running in both of these shoes. They're both kind of quite commendable for that. I put them both in the same ballpark as kind of good, reliable workhorse of a daily trainer with a little bit of energy kicked in as well. Initially, I think the Glycerin, that was the one that felt more energetic. And if you were looking for something a bit more lively, I would have said get that over like the Ghost 15. But I think the Ghost has stepped on now and it's a bit more lively, a bit more fun. But kind of still rings true to what a Ghost needs to do and what you'll be looking for.
My experience of the Ghost line and the kind of Glycerin line has been that I think with the Ghost, I've always kind of seen it as a no-nonsense shoe, not a massively exciting shoe, but a very predictable, kind of consistent, stable shoe to run in, which, doesn't sound like the sexiest of shoes, but if that's the kind of shoe you want for kind of workhorse daily trainer, something you can spend a lot of time in, then that is absolutely a shoe that kind of works for that. I think the Glycerin has always been the more interesting shoe for me, particularly the last few where you've had that DNA Loft V3 foam in there. I think that just elevated the feel and the enjoyment of running in the Glycerin. It's a little bit more bouncier. There's a little bit of that plush feel that I like in a daily trainer as well too. Not overly plush, but enough there to just make it a little bit more fun to run in. Now, obviously with the Ghost 16, you're getting that DNA Loft V3 foam in here. It's not as much as what you get here in the Glycerin 21, but I think ultimately it is enough here to make the Ghost 16, for me, feel a little bit more memorable to run in. I think, it's plush, but not as plush as the Glycerin 21, but it's enough there to let you sink a little bit in it, get a little bit of that bounce, more than you would get in the DNA Loft V2 kind of version of that cushioning technology, but also get something that still has those kind of Ghost qualities. It's still very stable. It's on a pretty stable, kind of, reasonably wide base there of this shoe, and it's a smooth and kind of comfortable ride. It's very consistent. The other thing for me is when I've tried to run a little bit quicker in this, and I would say kind of moderate pace, not my kind of tempo, kind of marathon pace, because, I just don't think it's built for that. I felt like it's been able to handle that. Now, while I think the Glycerin previously has been able to handle my more kind of moderate, kind of up-tempo pace, I don't think it's the same story here. Now, this is the heavier of the shoe. There's more of that foam. I do feel like you feel the weight of this shoe more. When I've tried to run a little bit quicker, it just hasn't felt, natural for me to do. And I felt it's more comfortable when I've been running very, very easy. And you really kind of appreciate that kind of bigger stack of that DNA Loft V3 foam, which you sink in a bit more. And it just feels more comfortable, protective, and softer feeling. Where I think in the formulation of it here in the Ghost 16, it gives you a little bit of that, but it still gives you a ride that's still a little bit on the firmer side, just because there's not as much of that foam. It still means that if you want to run a little bit quicker in this, I think you can do that. You wouldn't be doing speed sessions and interval sessions, but I think, as I said, moderate paces, this can absolutely handle it. Other things, I think obviously outsole wise, they're using the same outsole technology. There's a lot of rubber here, running, I'm not seeing terrible wear. That's what I'd expect from a Glycerin and a Ghost shoe. And I think from a durability point of view, I think they're going to be very similar. I think grip, traction side of things, very similar as well. I've done lighter trails on this, so if you're looking for something for park runs, it is going to handle going slightly uneven surfaces. It's not going to be an issue. So yeah, for me, I think, great that they've got, or both of these shoes have DNA Loft V3 foam in here. I think the best of Brooks' kind of cushioning technology. This one is definitely, for me, feels like the more comfortable one for slower, longer, kind of easier paces, and does excel on that front. And the Ghost 16 can handle that, can run a little bit quicker, but ultimately I think has a little bit more in its locker just because of that kind of drop in weight compared to the Glycerin 21. And also giving that kind of the durability and the kind of comfort in that upper that I think is going to still make it a workhorse kind of daily trainer shoe that you can definitely spend a lot of time in.
ride feels, I'd say it is very similar across the board between the Glycerin and the Ghost, now that they both have the same foam in there. But I do think the little changes that you have with the Glycerin make me prefer it slightly as a shoe. It's got a slightly smoother ride because of the lower drop. Slightly more foam in the midsole gives you a little bit more softness without adding too much weight and taking away anything really in terms of versatility versus the Ghost. But if I was just looking purely at ride feel, I'd be very happy to pick up the Ghost ahead of the Glycerin for $20 less, because I really enjoyed running in this shoe in terms of how it felt underfoot. It's got a versatile feel, a comfortable feel for long runs. It does move quite well for your general daily training when you are going to up the pace a little bit, and it's a little bit cheaper than the Glycerin. So I don't think the actual performance benefits of the Glycerin would amount to me buying the shoe, but I have had that real problem with the heel design on the Ghost, which I didn't have so much with the Glycerin, and that would steer me towards the Glycerin. So whether that affects other people as much, I don't know, but it is such a stiff heel counter on the Ghost, and it is on the Glycerin too. You can see I can't really make much of an inroad there, but just didn't really come across in testing. So there's some small quirk with the heel design that means that I've been okay in the Glycerin and wasn't okay in the Ghost, and sometimes that can be the case with running shoes. There's something very small, it's really hard to identify. I'd probably go and try both of these shoes on. They are usually available in running shoe shops to try on, especially if you have any kind of sensitivity around your Achilles tendon, because they're such structured heel counters. Those work for some people, do not work for others. I tend to not get on with them very well, and I just found the Glycerins was a bit better. So I would get the Glycerin of these two. I think it's also the slightly better shoe, but on performance alone, if you get on fine with both in terms of the fit, I think the Ghost is good enough that I'd be happy to get it for even the small saving that is the difference in price between them.
So verdict for me then, these two shoes I find very similar for the ride, the overall comfort, what they do. There's that small issue of the heel collars, that would be a distinguishing factor, and if you have a problem with that, I think you might need to go Glycerin over the Ghost 16. If you're going purely on the ride and the capability and the use case of the shoe, I don't think there's that much to choose between them. And actually, if you're going to get a Ghost 16 cheaper, that's the one that I would pick. Yeah, and for me, I think this is largely just going to come down to price and value, and I think for me, based on that, I would go for the Ghost 16.
So my verdict on whether you should go for the Brooks Ghost 16 or the Brooks Glycerin 21. Now, I think these are two very good cushion shoes. I think this is probably the nicest Ghost that I've used, and I think the Glycerin is more of the same, but I do think it's slightly changed from previous Glycerins. And for that reason, I think actually, and just with the changes that have happened with these two shoes, I would probably be swayed to go for the Brooks Ghost 16, whereas previously it would have been the Glycerin. And I think what I put that down to is I think that now that you have that DNA Loft V3 foam in the Ghost 16, while it's not as much as what you've got on the Glycerin 21, I do think it's enough to make it a more comfortable shoe to run in, a more comfortable shoe to run long in. There's a little bit more bounce, there's a little bit more life in that midsole and that overall ride, but crucially it still has all those qualities of the Ghost. It's still stable and comfortable. I think with the Glycerin 21, I think it's a more of a kind of max cushion feel of a shoe. I don't think it has the same level of versatility as the previous Glycerins have had for me. And I think if you're looking for a shoe that's going to protect, feel really soft and plush, and feel comfortable over those longer distances, then that is a shoe you'd get. But ultimately, I think you can do that and get that in the Ghost 16. Plus, I think it's got something that can handle more moderate, kind of easy to moderate paces, so slightly quicker runs because of that lighter weight, and also just feeling that there's a little bit more in that ride for it as well. So yeah, I would be going for the Brooks Ghost 16. It's cheaper. I think it's got aspects of the Glycerin 21 now, but also has that lighter weight and still has those kind of qualities of what you'd want from a cushion shoe. If you're looking for something that's protective, if you're looking for something that's stable, accommodating, and has that kind of comfortable upper, to make sure it has those kind of qualities that you'd want from a shoe you're going to spend a lot of time in, but also maybe want something that, you know, it's going to feel a little bit more memorable, which has not always been the case with the Ghost shoes, but I do think you get that now here with the Ghost 16. Okay, so there you have it. That is our take on how the Brooks Ghost 16 compares to the Glycerin 21. Now, hopefully you found that video insightful and helpful in helping you decide between these two shoes. Now, if you've got any questions about either of these shoes, or there are other comparison videos you want to see with either this or this, do let us know in the comments. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about our latest videos, and yeah, we'll see you in the next Run Testers video.